So now we're going to do Excel, or this week 04 Excel absolute reference assignment. And so now we're going to learn about absolute references. So in the previous assignment, we learned about relative references. And here's that assignment. So I'm just going to copy this and make a copy. I right-clicked it, made a copy. And I'm going to rename it. So I'm going to right-click that again, rename it. And then rename it, try it again, rename it from copy of to absolute references. So I'll select that and absolute references. And I'm going to open that one up. And now we're going to have absolute references. And so here is, I'm going to change this view to 200% so we could see it a little bit more clearly. And then we could also go to view and look at our show formulas. And here you can see we have all of our relative references. Well, what if this was like, you know, I needed to add tax, right? And then the tax amount, I could have down here, tax amount. And that tax amount would be like, I don't know, 0.08775. So that'd be like what? 8.775%. And then for that tax amount, I'm going to multiply this amount, whatever I added up, multiply it by, so I did equal sign, and then clicked on cell C6, multiplication, and then click on that and hit. And then I might hit enter. Alternatively, I could press, I think it's F4. Yeah. And so F4, or you could just manually put in those dollar signs. But you could see those dollar signs going in front of that reference. And what that does is it makes that reference absolute. So no matter where I put this formula, B is always, when I copy and paste the formula, B is always going to be B because it has a dollar sign in front of it. And 13 is always going to be 13 because it has a dollar sign in front of it. Here, right, B might change because only 13 has the dollar sign in front of it. Or here, 13 might change because only B has the dollar sign in front of it. Or here, they'll both change. They're both relative references. As I copy and paste and move that formula around, both of those will change. But if I have the dollar sign in front of the B, and if I have the dollar sign in front of the 13, B and 13 are both going to be absolute references. They're absolute. They're not relative. They're absolute. And so that absolute references means that no matter where I place this formula, that reference is always absolute. It is always going to reference B, and it's always going to reference 13. They're absolute references. Alternatively, you can see the C6 as a relative reference. So as I copy this formula and paste it around, the C6 is relative, so it changes. The C6 says, relative to this formula, take the cell right above it and then multiply it by B13. So that's how you read this formula. So this formula right here, right, equals C6 times $B, $13. The way you'd read this says, take the cell that's right above where this formula is, whatever that is, and in this case it's C6. Over here it would D6, over here it'd be E6. Take the cell that's right above this formula and multiply it always by whatever's in B13. So I'm going to press enter, so that formula is there. And now as I copy this formula, right-click copy, and paste it in other places, I'm just going to highlight it over all of that, paste, right? It's D6 here, it's E6 here, F6 there, G6 here, H6, I6. Relative to where this formula is, it's taking the cell right above it, right? And then it's multiplying it in all cases by the absolute reference B13. And so when I look at the calculation of this, so if I go to view and say don't show formulas, right? It's doing the calculation for me. It figured out the tax. So I'm going to go back to view and show formulas, and that's how you create an absolute reference. So knowing those two things, knowing relative references, knowing absolute references, that lets you go a long ways with spreadsheets. You know, like you could do a tremendous amount with spreadsheets. And just knowing those two things about spreadsheets gives you more power than most people have when it comes to spreadsheets. So it's pretty awesome. And the rest of it, you know, I mean, it's good stuff to know further, and you'll learn some other stuff which is really useful. But these are like two of the most fundamental things. So that's how you create absolute references. Feel free to recreate this one that I did here just like it is. Take a picture of it, screenshot it, and then submit that for your assignment. And we will see you in the next hands-on exercise.